Teddy, hello.
Oh.
Would you like to join us and introduce our guest? Eh, uh, Maybe he was asleep.
Oh,
And it's very difficult to just switch on when you're sleeping, isn't it, Teddy?
yeah.
Shall we have a go, though? Welcome to Pet Talk with me, Anna, and
Oh, he's so cute.
no, I say Teddy is definitely not going to introduce the show with me. Oh, so, well, I will do that myself. Hello, welcome to Pet Talk with me, Anna, and Teddy, who is now feeling very cozy and
Yeah.
not wanting to say any more. And our wonderful guest today, who is Eva Pirnat. Hello, Eva.
Hi, hi. Thank you for having me.
Well, one of the reasons that Teddy is tired is because he had a marvelous time on a walk today, got very muddy, had a shower, and when he has a shower, he generally likes to be cozy and
Mm.
as he dries and have a good snooze. And you are here because I watched you give a demonstration called Redefining Walks. And I thought it was brilliant.
Oh,
So
thank you.
so let's talk about this. What do you mean by redefining walks? Surely a walk is exactly what it says on the tin. We take
Yes.
dogs out, we walk together, and we come home.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Right? I never thought about like how dogs walk as a species if there's no human telling them how to do walks, right? So I thought, yeah, you take your dog out, you walk for, I don't know, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, maybe even more. And you walk the distance that you had in mind, and that's it. And you return back home. But when I started like learning with barks, where I got my like certification, um, I started thinking about the like how dogs do walks, right? And dogs are a very lazy animals. And they don't do walks in a way that we do them, right? For us, it's the distance. It's all about the distance. And maybe for some people, it's also about the time. So they want to walk the longest distance in a shortest amount of time, right? But for dogs, it's all about sniffing and exploring, and um, it's not, they don't care so much about the distance, but what they experience on the walk, right? So when you start thinking from their point of view, the definition of walks starts to change a bit. So,
Well, I think that Teddy might have something to say about being called lazy. Uh, I think from his perspective, this is just wisdom because what dogs are brilliant at doing is exploring. And I think what I'm hearing from you and living with Teddy, what I also appreciate is that for them, the walk is a sensory experience and it's all about the exploration.
yes, yes, exactly. And at least for me, when I take my dog out for a walk, um, when he explores, I also slow down. And the walks that I do with him, I come back totally relaxed, right? It's like I also explore. I get a chance to for all my senses to be engaged in the walk, right? And it's a very calming experience, opposite to just like walking, right?
We're talking, I think, about adult dogs
Yes, we are talking about adult dogs
because
here. Yeah.
Teddy as an adult is very different from Teddy as a puppy. And although we can amble along quite happily now as he sniffs and explores, I can recall the first year with Teddy, where it was so full on that I did not have many opportunities to even take pictures of him or video him, because my eyes were on him as he moved at 100 miles an hour, it felt like. So what do we do about that? What do we do with dogs who haven't acquired this in the moment uh, exploratory attitude on walks?
Yeah, so I think it's similar, for example, with adopted dogs or dogs that have some behavior problems. It's harder maybe for them to be calm, not just on walks, but in general, right? Or even be lazy. And I don't mean like lazy in a negative sense, but they are inactive like majority of the time as a species. And when I adopted my dog Balt, we struggled with walks so much. Like walks were something I did not want to do, because Balt was like, he was sprinting from one end of the leash to the other. He was not sniffing, he was not calm. So I relate to what you were saying, how your walks looked like. And I think in that moment, the best thing that we can do is like provide calm environment, try to be calm ourselves, work on a bigger picture, right? If we have a puppy, like they are still developing, of course they will not be as calm as an adult dog, so they are going through different phases, and we have to take each phase as it comes, right? We have to take every dog as they are at that moment. That can be very difficult. That was very difficult for me also. It was very hard to accept Balt and his his hyperactivity, his agitation, his fear, his reactivity. That was very hard for me to accept. But once I did, like things started to click, right? Things started to change because my perspective changed. Because before I was just thinking about the goal where we have to arrive. And I missed so many things with Bald because I was not in the moment. Um, so I think, yes, providing the best environment to not contribute to their stress levels is, I think, the most that we can do to, at one point, arrive at a change that comes from the dog themselves, right? Because I think those changes are the one that last, and the ones that don't negatively impact the dog, right? Because we don't know where the dog is, like how they feel. We maybe have like a sense how they are feeling, but each individual knows best how they feel and what they are capable at that moment. And once we start to listen to the dog and also keep in mind that every behavior is present for a reason, that really helped me like change my perspective from Balt is trying to like give me hard time on purpose to, okay, he is struggling with something. That really completely changed my attitude, right?
So let's take a dog that is perhaps experiencing over arousal, which would, I think, be the average puppy. And certainly in Teddy's case, um, I've never run so much as I ran in that first year, because I basically had to run with him, because he seemed to just be so aroused, so excited by being outside. And he wanted to sniff everything at once at top speed. And I think you're told, oh, they have to be walking nicely on the lead with the smiley lead. And, this was a dream that was never to come true as far as I was concerned, because my puppy certainly hadn't read the handbook on this. And then out recall, what recall? People used to say, oh, when they're puppies, they have great recall. Not mine. Mine was into everything all at once. And I had to have him on a long lead, which trailed along so that I could grab it if I needed to. So there's all of that. And I'm just wondering, is that, how do we deal with that? I was going to say, is that the norm? And I think my answer from observing other puppies is that I had a more excitable than average puppy. Yes, it's the norm that puppies are excited, but mine was super excited. So how do we deal with that without actually curbing their enthusiasm? And how do we know whether this is excitement or whether it's nervousness?
So we put so much pressure on ourselves and our dogs. They have to do this by this age. They absolutely cannot be doing this by this age. So much pressure, right? So much pressure. And I think like this kind of pressure doesn't help anyone, right? I think it has the opposite effect in reality. And I think the first thing is like look at the dog in front of you, right? Forget about like the loose leash. Your dog in that moment is like the best that they can do is be distracted by everything, right? So how can we be there for them, help them, but not tell them, oh, you cannot act like this, you cannot behave like this, right? So maybe it will help. Here every dog is different, right? So maybe for some it would help like to change the location of the walk. For some it might be helpful to stop the walks for some period of time. For some it would be beneficial like shorter walks. And like don't expect, I think like the expectation that things will change overnight is, I think, once again, putting too much pressure on ourselves and our dog. And just look for the like small changes. Oh, like he stopped and sniffed for a second longer than usual, right? It's the small steps that then contribute to the bigger change. And don't like put yourself down if your dog is not able to calm down. And also look at the bigger picture, right? Are there like some health issues? Are there like what's going on in the everyday life of the dog? That sort of stuff, right? It's not just the walks. The walks are just a piece of the puzzle. And also like knowing who dogs are as a species, how they behave, to have like this general frame to know. I think that really helps you then, okay, knowing if, okay, my dog is just a little excited, or if there is something more serious going on that is like a consequence of stress in the dog's life and that has to be addressed.
Do we have a lot of information about how puppies behave in street dog packs? Are they as excitable as our domestic pups? It's just something that, because of what you said, I suddenly had that question. I've not thought of that before, but do we have any observations on this?
I like in a research kind of way, I don't think so. But it would be really interesting to hear the people that live with street dogs, right? To hear what they have to say. I would imagine that they are like puppies, as we say, like puppies, they like have no attention span, make not good decisions, right? Because they are so young. But I don't know if they are like so excited and so like hyperactive than some puppies that we see here.
It just
Um,
occurred to me because, we do take them from their mothers at such
yes.
age, 8 weeks. And I have come to, it's my own personal opinion that this is too young now. I've come to the conclusion because I have seen where, for one reason or another, the separation from mother has been delayed, by another 4 weeks or so. And there's a distinct difference
Yeah.
in the maturity of the pups and the ability to deal with things.
Mm,
I think because you said, you know, we need to understand what they are like naturally, that's what prompted my question. Well, what
yeah.
are they like naturally?
Yeah.
Do we know? And actually, when it comes to puppies, we don't really know, do we?
I think like more attention, more research has to be like put on street dogs, because knowing who street dogs are or free living dogs, who they are, that really gives us so much information that then we can use in our dogs, like in pet dogs, um, and how to like come closer to their like natural way of being, their natural lifestyle. And as you've mentioned, like we take puppies away from their mothers way too young, because there is a research when the street puppies leave their families, and I think the youngest age was 6 months, and a lot of them never leave, like they stay with their family. So
Yeah.
that definitely contributes to the behavior of our puppies.
Yes. So obviously, puppies can be hyperactive, as we've said, but that hyper um, behavior could occur in mature dogs for various reasons. And you've talked about, potentially either stopping walks for a bit or shortening the walks, where a lot of people think that that would feel counterintuitive because they 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 think that more exposure is what the dog needs so that they get used to it, or the novelty wears off and they'll get more bored, or and yet that's really not what you're saying, is it?
Yeah, yeah, I'm exactly saying the opposite. And I also thought that, of course, you will walk your dog more if they're hyperactive, right? If they have to move, you go on a 2 hour walk or 3 hours long walk. But in reality, like we have a vicious circle, right? Because as I've mentioned, dogs naturally, like they are not very active. Majority of their time, they are either sleeping or just like sitting down, laying down, and observing their surroundings, right? And so this also happened with Balt, with my dog. When I adopted him, he wanted to move all the time, right? We came home, and 15 minutes later, he was like, "Okay, let's go out again," right? But he was not in a mindset where he could make good decisions, right? And when we move our dogs in a way that they are not naturally moving as a species, or offering them too much activity, physical activity, walking, running, that sort of stuff, like their stress levels, stress hormones rise. And one of the consequences of that is hyperactivity. They have to move more. They have to move more. And then we have a vicious circle. We have a dog who's not able to make good decisions, who has to move a lot, and is like um, working against what's natural and good for them. And they will not be able to break that cycle on their own if they are constantly moving too much, right? So what you wanted to say something.
I was listening to it and I was thinking, so this movement, this constant movement, is symptomatic of heightened arousal, heightened emotional arousal. And of course, none of us make decisions when we are operating purely on emotion. Um, and I think that's a really important point because we expect them to be able to calm down. And it gets to a threshold where they just can't calm down.
Yeah.
So tell us more about, specifically about what you did with Balt, because I think that would be really helpful to make this a more tangible
Yeah.
exercise for people to understand.
Yeah. So as I've mentioned, he was like running from one end of the leash to the other, not being able to calm down at all. He wanted to move all the time. So that's why I also made the decision to not stop walks altogether, because I thought, okay, like this is beneficial for him in some way, right? So how do I do this in a way that's not contributing to his like raising his stress levels, but he's still getting the thing that he needs from the movement, right? So I did not just focus on walks. What I also did was address his stress levels in general. I tried to like offer him the lifestyle as much as I could, the lifestyle that is as close as possible to the lifestyle of his species. I accepted that he had some trauma, so he's adopted a Spanish sighthound. So I do not know what happened in his history, but based on his physical appearance, his mental state, nothing good happened to him. So I knew that there was probably a lot of trauma that he had to process on his own. And I think this part, like processing on his own terms, how he wanted to process it, was a very important part. Because I realized that the frenziness, the running, no matter how crazy it was to me, it served a purpose for him, right? And what I did on walks, I chose locations that were calm, but still interesting, so that there were like different terrains, different trees, bushes, smells, and so on. But there were no dogs or cars because he was really dog reactive. He was very afraid of men. He was lunging at men, at cars, and so on. So the locations were very calm. And I then decided, okay, the running does something to you for you, so I will let you run for as long as you need, right? And what happened was that the running, like the intervals, were getting shorter and shorter and were fewer and fewer in between, and he started to sniff. And it was, oh, he sniffed for a second, yay, because that was not something that happened for us. So it was very, very small steps, but addressing the whole picture. So him getting enough sleep, him getting fresh food, him having dog companions, dog friends, on a regular basis, having me there, being there for him all the time when he needed to. That was all something that I think really contributed to how his way of walking also changed?
You know, this is the thing that we fail to understand, is that behavior we consider to be undesirable, it's not about the behavior, it's about what's behind it. And what you're talking about there is helping him to feel safe, taking that holistic approach to helping him to feel safe is absolutely fundamental. Because when you have a dog that has a level of trauma that you don't even know what it is, and he can't tell you, it was just, I think it's so beautiful and touching that you recognize he needs to run, but I need to provide him with a space where he's going to be free to run. And so, we hear about freedom fields now. That would be ideal for a dog like Balt.
Yes.
A field that's secure and that you could just let him go and run, and he's not going to come across other dogs. Or I think that's just beautiful. And you were talking about, the sniffing, and we know that sniffing is hugely calming for them. And he couldn't even do that, which I think for a dog is extraordinary. I mean, Teddy always sniffed.
Mm.
My approach with him was he needed to run.
Mm.
But we were attached by a lead, therefore I ran with him. The problem was that he would suddenly stop. And there's me kind of flinging in the other direction, being flung in because he's got a complete stop. But he did sniff.
Mm.
And I think this is such a recognition. So did you at home do any scent work games with him?
So that was also interesting. So what I did try was like scattering the treats around in our garden. And at first, like that was not possible for him. He could not concentrate for 10 seconds to look for the treats in the grass. And also his relationship with food was not good, so he got even more excited when food was present, so that did not work for us. And I also tried, like, when you like this little puzzles, like I took like boxes of like different things, and I put food in it, because I think we think a lot when we think about enrichment, like food is the first thing that comes to our mind. But again, like this was not something that was beneficial for Bald, because he got so excited, could not calm down. So this did not work for us. What I did is try to find interesting places for him that would like engage his sniffing for even a second, and a second longer was a victory for us. So yeah. And now he enjoys searching for treats in the garden, for example.
Yeah, it's very interesting because it's we all fall into that, don't we? Of using food so that they can, search for their food, etc. But I find, with Teddy that yes, I do that with him, but I also, I've taught him to find my keys and to find his lead. And twice, whilst we've been on walks, where I have lost his lead, he has been the one to find it. Quite a long way from where we are when I first realized where the lead is. So that's been really a very practical application of something
Yeah.
I was doing. But it is interesting, isn't it? Because you really are describing a kind of shutdown, aren't you? And we think of dogs that are shut down, as being unresponsive,
Yeah.
whereas your beautiful boy was, his nervous system was clearly completely overstimulated
Yeah.
because he was just so on the alert
Mm.
that
Yeah.
he couldn't even sniff or deal with food. So wasn't he lucky to have found you?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. We've come a long, long way, both of us. He taught me so much. So much. Yeah.
Well, I think one of my most extraordinary and deepest teachers is lying on the sofa next to me.
Yes.
Fluffy philosopher that's come into my life. And I think for many of us, it's when we are faced with dogs who haven't read all the behavior books
Yes.
that we begin to go, excuse me, but this isn't working for mine. What do I do? And essentially what you did, I'm so full of admiration for that, because what you did is you helped your dog to feel safe.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a big thing. So on a day-to-day level, then how did you do that? I mean, we know about the walks and how you did that with the walks, but at home, how did you do that? Did you um how did you feed him? What did you do about, sleep? Did you do anything that actively encouraged him to relax? What did you do?
Oh, that's a hard question. I was listening to him. I think that's like the best way to summarize it. I observed him. There was a lot of trial and error where I did something and he was like, no, no, this is not working for me. So we explored, for example, with food, we explored, okay, do you prefer cooked food? Do you prefer raw food? Do you prefer your food mixed together or every ingredient like separate? Do you prefer this bowl? Do you prefer like this height of the bowl? Do you prefer eating alone or with me present in like in the same room? So it was a lot of like getting to know him, and once I knew like his preferences, I respected that. Like I respected his decision, even if it was not something I wanted. For example, on walks, if he wanted to go in a different direction that I did, um, of course, if there was like any danger for him or for someone else, or if he wanted to go on the garden, in the garden of someone, of course, we couldn't do that. But if there was no reason why not go in the direction he wants to go, um, I followed him. So I think this really built our relationship. Um, I think I can say like I had two dogs before Bald, but it is kind of difficult to admit that I probably did not know the previous two dogs as good as I know Bald. Um, and yeah, that's how we built our relationship, like slowly, steadily. And he learned, like I showed up for him, and he knows that I will show up for him, and I think that's what gave him the sense of safety.
You know, the temptation for so many people is that nasty little word, discipline,
Oh.
and I remember when Teddy was about maybe 12 weeks old, a moment in our kitchen where he was barking at me. And I thought he was being aggressive. Looking back now, I realize actually he was trying to tell me something. And what he was doing is he was trying to get my attention because he wanted to play.
Mm.
But first dog, I'd only had him a month
Yeah.
and I didn't know what that meant. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm losing control.
Mm.
And my approach, very similar to yours, isn't working. And I'm going to end up with a dangerous dog.
Mm.
Well, that moment, thankfully, was only a moment. And I thought, I'm going to have to be stricter.
Mm.
Do you know how long that lasted?
How long?
It lasted less than 24 hours. Because Teddy quite rightly looked at me and said, "You're not that person, and I'm not that dog."
Mm. Yeah.
It didn't.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, what I did do was I spent a lot of time not sleeping whilst I was in bed, dreaming up games that we could play together.
Mm.
And that helped me learn who he was and understand him a lot more.
Yeah.
And for all the mistakes that I've made, which I'm sure in Teddy's mind have been many, um, I I think at least I got that right.
Yeah.
I got that right. And when I say I've made lots of mistakes, is because it takes a while for us to be able to read our dogs, to understand who they are, and to understand what they're trying to tell us. They don't speak
Mm.
a human language.
Mm.
And so it's, you know, we're learning doggy as a foreign language and they're learning human as a foreign language, except their powers of observation
Oh,
are
yes.
far superior to ours.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
could write a book and he would call it The Ways of Mummy.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's it, isn't it? So your story is so inspiring. And I think, you know, I hope that anyone who is watching and who is struggling because their dog is not has not read the, you know, the Disney manual of how to be a dog,
Mm.
um is reassured and finds inspiration. But they could also find you for help. So how do they do that, Eva?
So they can visit my Facebook or Instagram page, Noyakanis, or they can visit my website, which is www.noyakanis.si. Yeah, and that's it. So, and I just like want to say that when you are in the moment when it's very difficult, you cannot imagine like stuff going better, changing for the better. I don't have any video of Balt on walks from the times when it was really difficult because I didn't think that things will get better. And I thought, why would I want to have a video of that on my phone? But now I would be so happy to have that video to see like how far we've come and things can get better. And they get like really beautiful and a very deep relationships can um, emerge from this. So
You know, when I was a teacher, the children who drove me absolutely crazy because they were struggling to fit into the school system
mm,
are not only the children that I remember to this day, but they are the children I loved most deeply. And
yeah,
that's because they're the children I got to know best.
yeah,
It wasn't that I didn't care about the others. Of course I did, deeply. But I had no choice but to form a connection
Mm,
with those children just to be able to survive my day with some sanity.
mm,
And so, let alone help them. So it's the same thing, isn't it, with the animals who are in our lives, those that turn up and turn our worlds upside down are the ones that are going to teach us because they're challenging us to form a deep connection. And if we are willing to do that, the reward is beyond anything that we can even translate into language. So it's wonderful to hear your story about Balt. Thank you very, very much.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'll be putting a link to all of your social media and your website in the description box. Eva, I thank you for your time once again.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you all for watching. I think we're going to be looking at bull breeds very soon, as well as cockapoos and, well, horses. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.